What's up, gang? Welcome to The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now listen, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to this episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest. John Fugelsang is in the house. What's up, John?
Darius, thank you for having me and letting me drag your show down to my level. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to drag it as far as you can.
You got a great show, man. Your show's all about intentionality, and I really admire what you're doing here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, audience, you guys know I'm a selfish SOB when it comes to the show, and I'm watching the Daily Show, and I see John on it, and he's promoting his new book, which we're going to be talking about, Separation of Church and Hate. And we haven't talked a lot about religion on the show. We talk a lot about spirituality, and I'm a little bit of a believer in mysticism, but you guys don't know this, but I'm like, dude, I hate seeing anyone weaponize religion. It bothers me. A couple years ago, I got into this really strong kick around spirituality, and a few friends referred a couple books to me. So they saw the opportunity to indoctrinate me. Like, they're like, oh, we're gonna see. They're like, oh, Darius is like really into God right now. Like, let's see if he wants to go to church. Which, dude, if I was them, I would do the same thing. And so they referred this one book to me, which was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was essentially this book about this guy that starts a church in New York City and starts converting a bunch of anti-religious people into Christians, right? And so I'm reading the book, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Is it a novel or is it a nonfiction book?
No, it's a nonfiction book
Okay.
about this church in Manhattan that this guy, and I'm forgetting the name of it. And my next thing was like, well, what's the opposite of that? So I read Zealot, which is a book about how basically
Reza's book, yeah.
Yeah, I read Reza's book, and I'm like, oh, this seems way more up my alley. I'm like challenging the status quo and historical Jesus and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, well, I know I'm more confused now than I was before, so I'm good. That means I'm on the right track. And so anyway, I kind of put those books down, but I got your book, man, devoured it, and just, first of all, so grateful to have you here today. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. My book is called Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalists, Fascists, and Flock-Fleecing Frauds. And I'm so honored when people who are not religious read it. This book took me 13 years to sell. This book was turned down for many, many years. And
Really?
So to have both believers and atheists and agnostics and believers of different faiths come to me and say, this validates my beliefs, has been really, really lovely. After a long time of getting people, to say they didn't think there was a home for this book.
That's amazing. So I'm going to give your formal bio. I want to go into the book, but before we do that, I want you to give a little bit of your background to the audience who maybe not be as familiar with your work.
Sure.
And by the way, guys, John said I could make up whatever bio I wanted about him.
Please,
so,
yes, make it sound good, please.
So first of all, it's gonna be no surprise that John is an accomplished comedian, actor, and writer. I'll triple underline the comedian because you were really funny, and TV personality as well. Appearances on major TV shows. Like I told you, I saw him on The Daily Show, and I love The Daily Show, and I was like, oh, this guy's this is amazing. I can't wait to read this guy's book, and here we are. Well-known commentator and host. We just talked about the book, and also host of the podcast, the John Fugelsang podcast. So I know you probably, and I know a little bit about your background because the book talks about it, but, did you always want to be a comedian? Give us a little bit of context around how did you get to becoming this really opinionated person in the entertainment industry that wrote a book about political Christianity? Yes.
Yeah. Well, it all began with my parents, I guess. I should start with them because I'm not supposed to be here. My parents both once promised God that I would never happen. My mother grew up in the South, and she went into the convent straight out of high school and became a nun. The convent sent her to nursing school and then off to Africa to work with lepers in Malawi. before they shipped her off to Africa, they briefly stationed her at Holy Family Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. My dad is from Brooklyn. He was a Franciscan brother. He taught history to Catholic boys and dressed like the Lost Jedi of Flatbush with the brown robes and the rope belt. And my father, the brother, met my mother, the sister, fell madly in love with his nurse in the hospital, and couldn't tell her. He had promised God he'd never have these feelings, so he kept it a secret and became best friends and was her pen pal when she was in Africa. After about 10 years of carrying a torch, she finally got her to leave, and they were married 2 months later, and they raised us on Long Island to be progressive, free-thinking, sexually repressed Catholics. So that's why I became a comedian, because I could never afford the therapy I actually require. And I always wanted to be a creative. I began working in regional theater. I think the first time I got paid for theater, I was 11 years old, and after that, I was in a production of Hamlet when I was 12. And after
Wow.
spending like 4 months of seventh grade working with adults on a production of Hamlet, my Atari games felt pretty boring after that.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to have a very diverse career. So I've been an actor, I've been a stand-up comedian. My dad was a history teacher, and I always wanted to talk about politics and religion. My agents and managers always discouraged it, but Bill Maher kept booking me on his show to debate people like Jerry Falwell and David Duke. And so I finally began doing more and more political material. And then I started doing more material about Christianity, not denigrating religion, but what's the stuff that Jesus in the book, whether he's real or not, what's the stuff that Jesus says versus the stuff his loudest, most right wing fan clubs tend to fight for. And the reality is that there's not a lot of overlap between the teachings of Jesus and right wing Christianity. And I've done a show for SiriusXM for the past 10 years called Tell Me Everything. I do the primetime programming now for the Progress Channel. And the point I tend to make, and the last several years of politics have proven it, conservative Christian, right wing Christianity, Christian nationalism, fundamentalism. I'm not talking nice conservative people. I'm talking the haters, the right wing Christians. They don't fight for anything Jesus talked about. They don't fight for anything God talks about. They're not fighting for religious freedom. They don't fight against Satan. They fight for conservative Christian power.
Mm.
That's what they believe in. That's what their mission is organized around. They fight for conservative Christian power using whatever means they need. And one of those things is a persecution narrative that, yes, we're the top religion and we're white Christians, number one, we're the biggest, and we're under siege. We're always under, oh, these tiny minority groups. Oh, we are so threatened. And the persecution narrative is something that fundamentalists of all religions do. Right-wing Jews, right-wing Muslims,
Mhm.
right-wing Hindus. Anything we do is justified because of all the awful stuff that's done to us, right? This is how Donald Trump got right-wing Christians to get on board with his racist sex assault nonsense. He didn't get the Christians by promising to do a single thing Christ talked about. He got the Christians by promising to put them first. I'll put you on top. Oh, you've been so besieged, but when I'm president, I'll prioritize you and put you above it. And that's seductive. You know why? Because it's the opposite of Jesus. The character of Jesus in the book is all about service. He's all about humility. He's all about going to the margins to help the less fortunate. Servant leadership, washing your own followers' feet. Jesus says in
Right.
Matthew 25, individuals and nations are going to be judged, heaven or hell, by how they welcome the stranger, how they care for the poor, care for the sick, and are kind to those in prison. Not how much they scream at women outside clinics, not how much they hate Muslims or trans kids. I never got told as a kid those were Jesus's top four priorities. But Jesus says you got to pick up your cross and follow me every day. It's supposed to be hard to fight for the marginalized. That's his mission. Not about power. It's not about you're better than everyone. It's not about total right wing domination of the local school board. And I wrote this book because I got tired of seeing my parents' religion used as a justification for
Mm.
cruelty and meanness. If your church isn't telling you to love your enemies, but keeps on telling you who your enemies are, you're not really in a church.
Yeah.
That was a very long-winded, preachy answer to a very simple question.
No, no, it's I appreciate it. So let me ask you a question. Obviously, having grown up in a family where, I mean, when the story obviously starts that way in the book, where you're talking about your mom and dad and their backgrounds and how, and which is fascinating. Where in Long Island? What city in Long Island were you?
I grew up in a town called Bohemia, and then a town called Stony Brook.
Okay, nice. I used to have a business in Melville, Long Island,
Oh, right
and
on.
I'm from the West Coast, but that's a long story and not relevant to this story. But anyway,
My dad taught near Millville.
I spent a lot of time in the Hilton Huntington. Um, so you
My mom taught at the hospital in Huntington. I
no
mean, my
way.
mom nursed at the hospital in Huntington.
So you're like growing up in that environment. You have siblings, I'm assuming as well,
Yes, sir, I do.
and so you know, as you start to see, growing up in this environment where I guess looking at how religion's being used now compared to as you grew up, what's like the biggest differences in your mind, like the way you perceived it or the way you actually think it's being used in the world today when you were a young man versus today?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was a young man is when it all began to change. These fundamentalists, right? These guys like Jerry Falwell, who I grew up around. Falwell was a segregationist. A lot of these guys were. Christianity was used to prop up segregation, just like it was used to prop up slavery. And after, civil rights and the Voting Rights Act and Dr. King, and then Nixon and Watergate, the racists and white supremacists kind of lost their mojo. The white supremacists like Jerry Falwell, who built whites only schools and supported apartheid, they spent much of the 70s. Their big issue was the Jimmy Carter's IRS was trying to take tax exempt status away from colleges and universities that still practiced racial segregation in this century, in the 70s. And it wasn't a really sexy issue. By the late 70s, people weren't really on the let's defend segregation bandwagon. So by 1980, Ronald Reagan ran for president, who would sign the most liberal abortion law in California history as governor. But by the late 70s, Reagan had become steadfastly anti abortion, and it worked. And in the 1980s, we began to witness this calibration where they shifted the entire focus of right wing Christianity to criminalizing abortion. Not the stuff Jesus talked about, but putting women in jail or putting doctors in jail for terminating pregnancies. What they did in the late 70s, early 80s was rewire American Christianity. They got the
Uh,
followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus actually talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. The Bible, now this is where I'm going to lose some of your listeners, but the Bible is never against abortion. God, Moses, Jesus, Paul, Elijah, the prophets, no one ever thought it was important to talk about it. God asserts in Exodus 21 that a fetus is property, a man's property, but a property, and that a woman's life has more value in his eye than a fetus. God
uh,
gives rather specific and gruesome abortion tips for unfaithful pregnant wives in Numbers chapter 5. If you think God really cares about innocent children, let me tell you Gentiles all about Passover. Jesus was against the death penalty more than once, but never mentioned abortion. And yet, Darius, we've now witnessed two generations since Ronald Reagan became president, 45 years of American Christians wired to believe that Christianity is foremost about something the Bible never mentions. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now because Jesus' religion of Judaism and the Bible never bans it, but it didn't matter. And so for two generations, we witnessed it completely rewired. By the time it was the 1990s, if you were a young person and you told someone you were Christian, they automatically assumed you hated gay people and that you thought teenage rape victims should be forced by government to be pregnant by their stepdad against their will. Like, that's what they have done. They have polluted Christianity. And my whole thing was, I'm not here to sell religion to anybody. But this book is for any believer or non-believer who is going to have to deal with a Christian nationalist in their home, in their schools, in their job, in their government, because they don't actually follow Jesus. He's a prop they wave around to get power. And you could just ask any Trumper, give me the one teaching of Christ that your movement fights for, chapter and verse, please, and you'll find out how little they know this actual book. So I wrote this book for everyone who's going to have to deal with these people. I'm not asking you to take any part of the Bible literally. I'm just writing this to say, here's what's actually there. Here's what they fight for. Here are the arguments right-wing Christians make to justify meanness and cruelty. And here's why it's totally full of crap.
So after reading your book, I have a few friends who are pretty hardcore right wing Christians,
Me too.
and family members,
Me
and so
too.
I took it upon myself where I was like, I don't know, I don't know enough about the Bible to actually be able to um, debate properly with like my own knowledge. I said, but there's this wonderful thing called AI that can learn that stuff way faster than I can. So I tested this and I started going on. I was on Facebook and a family member whose name shall remain nameless always posts very like he's very pro MAGA, pro right wing, very Christian in his mind, and loves talking about Jesus. And so he was promoting something that was just it was a little bit inflaming. And so I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, what Bible verses would you use to combat this statement? And it started like spitting out like Bible verse like and how that this would essentially not support what he's saying if you took it from the lens of a Christian. And I don't remember the
And I'm
specific
guessing
one.
he's not quoting Jesus. That's the thing, right? These are the anything but MAGA is anything but Jesus Christians. They will quote you anything in the Bible except Jesus, and then they'll say, "Well, it's in the Bible," and that's how they
So
get around it.
that was an interesting part. So it was always they're always either like one of the disciples or
Yeah.
it's never Jesus
It's always
specifically to your
Paul. It's always Paul or some homophobic shit from the Torah. Yeah, they don't actually follow Jesus. They don't fight for Jesus's teachings. Jesus brought a new covenant. So all that Old Testament homophobia, you don't get to use that unless you're keeping kosher and not eating ham, right? Like they'll say, "Oh,
no shellfish.
Leviticus 18, you shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It's an abomination," right? Except Jesus brings a new covenant. Leviticus was for the Jews escaping slavery in Egypt who didn't know they were going to be trapped in the wilderness for 40 years. It's mostly about keeping your tribe's numbers up. So that's why
Right.
there's no sex on your period, no bestiality, no dudes with dudes, no incest, no adultery. They're all about how do we stay faithful to God and keep on reproducing. They don't care. And they don't care that homophobia is against everything Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount. They like it. They'd experimented with homophobia in college. It turned them on. They get into it. So they'll say, "Oh, Leviticus 18, shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It's an abomination." Well, then you just say right back, Leviticus 20:10 commands us to stone adulterers to death. So should I
Yeah.
call the Secret Service at Mar-a-Lago and let them know that you're coming over with some rocks right now? Because if you're not trying to stone Donald Trump to death for adultery, you know what that means? It means you don't follow, believe in, obey, or live by the book of Leviticus, which means you are weaponizing a Bible verse you don't believe in to hurt a minority that Christ commands you to love. Shitty
Yeah, that's
homophobia is not covered under Jesus's plan. And so
that's
ask him, Jesus, what I'm so sorry, Derry, but I just say,
no
ask him
no
what
no.
Jesus teaching, and you'll find out really quick how little they know the Bible and that they're counting on you not knowing the Bible too.
Yeah, so I guess this begs to bigger issue because I think that like one of the takeaways I had from this was, and I like I said, I tested it and
Yeah, tell me about your
I
test.
well, I think he was doing the same thing. I would say I was like, what would you say to combat this? Using the teachings of Jesus, and and then I think he went to AI and did the same thing. And we are going back and
What
forth, and I
topic?
was like,
What was the subject?
oh, I'm forgetting. I wish I remembered the topic. I should have gone back and looked before the show,
All good.
but it was. I tried it a couple times and I ended up in the same spot. And I was like, God, this feels like I'm arguing about like I did this thing on social media where it was right around the Kings the what's no Kings
Yeah.
demonstrations, and I put a post out and I said, what would have to be true for you if you're a conservative, and I said, look, I'm a raging moderate. So I really, and you're a raging moderate, by the way, if your family calls you a Trumper on the left and your family on the right basically basically says you're woke. And so I'm accused of both.
Did you
And by
vote
the
for
way,
Trump? Did you vote for Trump?
no, I did not.
Okay.
And so but I'm accused of being a closet Trumper because I'm a moderate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
I, and
so
I
I
and I'm not, but like I got used to it. If I wasn't called, an Obama basher and an Obama apologist every day, I wasn't doing my job. I understand where you're coming from. Go on,
Yeah,
please.
it's a really I always tell people I go, you're moderate if you're being accused from both sides. And so because my family
Yeah,
on the left
I
will say
promise you, I'm not a moderate, and I get it from both sides too.
it's funny to see like how this shows you how polarized we are. So I said, hey, to my conservative friends, what would need to be true for you to go march on the No Kings? And you want to know, John, what demonstration? And you know what the responses I got, I was hundreds of responses. It was really an
What? What's
engaging
that?
response. The answer I got was nothing. There's nothing that would need to happen for them to ever there's literally nothing that the current president could do if you're conservative.
Yeah. That,
That
by the
was the
way,
conclusion
I
I
know
got
it's a
to.
cult, but that's not true. If Donald Trump began wearing a T-shirt with the words "black" and then the word "lives" and then the word "matter" after it, if he wore that T-shirt every day for a month, you'd see how much the fan base was loyal to him.
You think that they would turn on him on that one?
He wouldn't lose all of them, but yes, I do. He'd lose a lot of
Okay,
them. Oh
all
yeah.
right,
And by the way, in 10 years, most of these folks are going to deny they ever voted for him after 2016. I mean, think about this. Remember the Iraq War, and those of us who said, "Hey, this is a bad idea,"
yeah,
and we said, by the way, Bush and Cheney's trickle down their economic plan. It's going to lead to a recession. This is bad for our economy. Bush and Cheney are going to be bad for the world, and this war is bad. And they hated us. They hated us for questioning Bush and Cheney. I was called a terrorist lover. And I'm from downtown New York. I was called a freedom hater, and then we were proven right. And their economic plan sucked, and the world economy collapsed, and the housing market collapsed, and the Iraq War was built on lies. And the right wing folks realized they'd been lied to. The liberals were right, and they hated us even more. And then Trump comes along in 2015 and says, "Oh, you guys were lied to in this Iraq War by Bush Cheney." Just like that. "Oh, we hate Bush Cheney." Right
yeah.
away. You try to find you try to find 10 right-wing guys who will defend Bush and Cheney in the Iraq War. Go to any right-wing event. Try to find 10 guys who will still defend Bush and Cheney in the Iraq War. They're not loyal, they're obedient. And they're obedient to whoever the cult leader is. So when we warned them about Bush, they hated us. When we were proven right, they hated us more. When Donald Trump told them that Bush was bad, they believed him, and now they hate us for warning them about Trump. I mean, I personally thought that beating cops for a lie on the Capitol steps was going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people, but
I did too. Yeah.
testosterone's a strange and fragile thing. So I don't think a lot of these people are going to be defending Donald Trump 10 years from now. In fact, you know what, friends? Be healthy and stay alive to see what it's like.
What do
But
you
and
so
after he dies, but I'm so sorry, but after he dies, by the way, he's not going to heaven, but the NDAs are all going to heaven. And so much shit that he's kept hidden secret with bribes will not be secret anymore. Really, 5 years after he's dead, go back to your Trumpers and see if they still defend him as viciously as they defend him now, this racist, pussy grabbing fraud who steals from veterans with a fucking online university.
what so what I learned tell me how you
Sorry,
really
this is
feel,
my
John.
Jesus book.
Hey,
Hey, let me talk
hey,
about Jesus again.
hey, John, how do you really feel?
Well, no,
So
listen, I don't like exploiting the poor, and that's what he's done. And Jesus flipped the tables in the temple on Holy Monday because they were exploiting poor people with the temple exchange rates and currency. So, like, I get really, really mad when I see people using my mom and dad's religion to justify the opposite. But that's the history of authoritarian Christianity. From the time Rome took over Jesus's operation, and it ceased being about the homeless, brown-skinned Jewish mystic faith healer in the poor neighborhoods of Galilee, and it became about authority, hierarchy, dogma, and now it's about doing the opposite of how Jesus tells us to treat each other for Jesus. So Rome takes over, right? You have the Crusades, and we are slaughtering pagans and Muslims and Jews to take land, but we're doing it for Jesus. We're going to put crosses everywhere while while we murder people. Then the doctrine of discovery, the Vatican says, go and steal resources, just subjugate the peoples and convert them to Christianity. Columbus is here slaughtering the Taino people in the shadow of the cross. But just as in the Crusades, right, it was St. Francis who quit the war and preached peace. as Columbus is committing his atrocities, it was the Catholic priest on his third ship, Father
Mm,
Bartolomeo de las Casas, who
yeah.
wrote to the Queen to officially protest. And this is the whole history of Christianity. You got slavery is propped up in this country by the Bible, and it's Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and the Quakers who are fighting back. Hitler is the ultimate Christian nationalist, and Christ followers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer stand up to him and martyr themselves and give their lives to save their Jewish brethren. Segregation is propped up back here in New York, in America, and you've got Christ followers like Dr. King out of Atlanta using a Bible and nonviolence to end our American apartheid of segregation. And think about in the last 30 years how many folks have talked so many parents and grandparents out of so much homophobia. Like there's this
Mm.
incredible history of Christian activism, but it has always manifested itself in resistance to Christian authoritarianism. These guys will use Jesus to get power and commit all acts of cruelty, but for Jesus, the ones who've actually read the book are the ones who do what Jesus did, stand up to empire, not ask it for a job.
Yeah, that was an interesting in Reza's book, he talks about essentially Jesus was against like Roman overreach of power in Israel, and
Hmm.
and at the time, if I'm remembering the book properly, crucifixion was the penalty for that specifically, and they're saying he was essentially a political activist supporting the poor, and
Yeah.
they chose the most painful death specifically for that reason,
Well,
and
I mean,
so
a lot of people got it. Rome crucified people all over the region for that and for other offenses. But yeah, I mean, you're nailing it. He was. I mean, Jesus was taken down by a small group of extreme conservative religious leaders allied with an authoritarian government. That is what gave us Trump. That is literally what killed Jesus. Authoritarian government aligning itself with right-wing conservative religion. That's it. And when Jesus came out and said the kingdom of God is at hand, that the kingdom of God is here right now, that was seditious to Rome. When Jesus had his temple freak out on Monday, that was in full vision of the Roman guards. Like they would crucify guys for even less. And you're right, it was the most humiliating, painful kind of death. It's also worth remembering that Jesus was against the death penalty, but he never mentioned abortion.
what like one of the things, and where I was going with the conversation around the No Kings demonstration, that when I had that post
Please.
I got tired after it because I was like, I don't feel like this is like there's like wanting to be right and then what is true, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like I'm a natural truth seeker. I'm like, okay, I try to have no opinion. I try to be unbiased, even though that's very hard to do. I try to just say, okay, well, let me get facts from multiple sources, and then I'll make a decision.
Yeah.
Even when Trump got elected in office his first term, I was like, all right, I didn't vote for him, so I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. I swear to God, I did this. And we're watching the State of the Union, and he said a bunch of great stuff, and I was like, all right, maybe this guy's not going to be a complete fucking shit show. And then
Mm.
that was I was quickly disappointed. And so, and my main reason for not voting for him is I'm a conscious capitalist. I'm a conscious leader. I believe in conscious leadership, and I believe that as goes the leadership goes the organization. And I don't like his leadership, so
Yeah.
I don't.
He's not a good
I
leader. He's a boss. And he's a shitty boss at that. He's not a leader. Yeah,
yeah, and
he
so
doesn't have loyalty. He has obedience.
I was talking to my brother about this over the holiday, and I said, Mike, like, I believe that there's really like 3 or 4 things that matter if we want to make this country a better country, and if we want to, and I believe this to be true of any organization. I think you need to lead with love. I think you need to have loyalty, and I think you need to have unity of your people, right? And really, like, if those 3 things aren't true, we have a problem, and I don't think those things are true right now. So when I posted that post on Facebook, and even when, and this goes back to the conversation about me, doing the AI thing with basically a family member, what I realized was, I'm like, this is futile. Like, I'm not going to change these people's minds and I don't want to say these people because that sounds bad, but I'm not going to change
I
a
know what you
person's
mean.
mind that has a differing, that they're dead set on their opinions. Right?
Yes,
They're
you
dead
won't.
set. Right. And so,
But you can sway the bystanders.
so let's talk about that, because I think that there's a certain percentage of the population, at least 38% of the population, right? That is our hardcore, voting for the types of things you're talking about. Maybe it's a little less than that. Um, I don't think we're convincing anyone that hey, this is not true. I think people want to believe what they want to believe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if I give you a confirmation bias around it, or a line of the Bible, or a person that supports it, even if they've done a ton of bad things, they're good by me because they believe what I believe, right?
Yeah.
This is like this human tribalism that we have.
Very
This is
much
one of the
so.
reasons why I'm so for leadership, because
Yes,
I'm
sir.
like, you need good leadership to get people to move in the right direction, which is why I did not vote for our president. So when you look at that and you say, okay, I'm not going to change our minds. I can sit there and joust with my cousin over something that he and I disagree on, and it's like a debate, if you will. But at the end of the day, like, he's going to believe what he believes more than likely, if
Yeah.
he's not a person that is open minded. And
Correct.
same with myself. Okay,
Correct.
or true of anybody. I would say I'm pretty open minded though. Like, I'm like, hey, you can probably convince me if you could show me a lot of really good data to support it, or a lot of the supporting documentation. I'm probably someone that will believe stuff until I don't believe it anymore. I'm okay with being dead wrong. Um, I don't think most people are like that. I think people want to fit in their tribe. They want to get along. They want to like say like, oh yeah, I believe what you believe. I trust you. But to your point, there are bystanders that don't believe that are not like that. How do we characterize who those are? Who's worth the time to have those conversations within your mind?
Well, I mean, look, most populations are one third conservative, one third progress, one third apathy, right? One third status
Mhm.
quo, one third let's do progress, one third doesn't care. That was the American Revolution. One third of us were conservative and wanted to stay loyal to the crown. One third of us were revolutionaries, and one third of us were like, "What's for lunch?" I mean, that was that's our society now. And that's why our elections are these two sides spending so much money to reach the apathetic people who don't pay attention in the middle. It's kind of an insane
Mm.
system. So I think that when I wrote this book for people who are going to be debating with their family and coworkers and loved ones, but I don't believe in debating in a vacuum. You probably won't sway the other person, especially if they're in the MAGA cult. If you can see cops savagely beaten on the Capitol steps for a lie, and then say, I would rather vote for the 34 times convicted felon and rapist who can't stop lying to me and lied to my family during a plague over a prosecutor, then nothing, no facts, no reason, no scripture, no constitution, no Bill of Rights is ever going to sway you. But again, there's the apathetic people. So when you're at the cookout and Uncle Racist is doing all this, you probably will never be able to reach Uncle Racist, but you can reach his wife, you can reach his kids, you can reach the bystanders if you model how to debate. And if you do it in such a way where you're not trying to win, you're not trying to hate, you're not trying to make someone else look bad. You're asking questions respectfully. And I wrote this book to give people the spiritual background and the actual sources and verses in the Bible to use on whatever issue you're debating. Because again, the right wingers are not on the side of Jesus, which is why they never try to post a Jesus quote anywhere on a classroom wall or a courthouse wall. Have you ever seen that happen? They don't follow the guy, he's their prop. So if you're not caring about winning, whatever that means, but you're caring about speaking your truth to people and reaching them, you may have to model turning the other cheek because
Ha-
when you actually question one of these people about what's in the Bible, they've probably never been questioned about it. They'll get really angry. But by being patient, by being kind, by not taking the bait to hate and rage back at them, and just asking questions about what scripture actually says versus this policy. If you believe this, then why do you do this? If you're choosing this chapter to live by, that isn't Jesus. And doesn't this conflict with this? Just familiarize yourself with a couple of issues around whatever the topic is. And that's where you will present the kind of person who will win over that douchebag's kids or wife or the other people at the Thanksgiving Day dinner. And again, you're casting a wide net, and it's all about love. It's not about winning.
when you look at, so one of the things you brought up multiple times, and I'd love your guidance on this, because I think that people will quote the Bible, right, to your point, and then and obviously no, I think outside the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is some observation of Jesus, there isn't actual no, this happened, what, 2,000 years ago. We don't have any like actual proof of what he said, right, outside of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Is that correct? The rest came from the
I wouldn't call the Dead Sea Scrolls proof either. No, I mean we're it's a big game of telephone, and if you
right.
believe the Bible is the absolute word of God, then you've also got to believe God doesn't want any of us to ever see any original copies.
Using that framework, my understanding is, hey, a lot of the teachings came through, to your point, game of telephone, people that were, witnesses that told the story, someone that told the story, or they became one of the disciples of Christ. And then the other thing that I understand is that most of the Bible is essentially a metaphor, right? It's meant to be taught through metaphor, and that you should not take any of this literally. It's meant to make a point, and that when Jesus was doing his teaching, supposedly that he taught through metaphor, and so we should interpret in metaphor. Like, what is your understanding of that? Because that was my read on all this. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah,
so if we're playing a 2,000-year-old game, or let's say,
yeah.
when the Bible was written, what, 500 years after the death of Christ, or 300 years after the death of Christ was the New Testament.
300, they began putting it all together.
Right. And it's a game of telephone then, 300 years later. Like, let's just be frank here. 300 years ago, 249 years ago was the American Revolution. Let's just okay,
Yeah.
that's a really long time ago. And there was nothing in writing, and everything was passed down by word of mouth to today. That's not even 300 years ago. Like, I would assume there'd be a lot of discrepancies in those stories,
There's a lot of
right?
discrepancies in those stories. And again, Jesus' followers, the guys who knew him, they all got killed. They all got bumped off. The version of Christianity we're operating on is Paul's Christianity. We don't have to go down a big Paul hole, but Paul and the Pharisees were off murdering the apostles. So the guys who actually knew Jesus got bumped off, but Saul, who became Paul, it's his version we go by. He poured all of his hangups into his letters to the early church he was setting up, and his hangups then became part of Scripture 300 years later when Rome said, oh, let's make this the Bible. So suddenly, Paul's letters about Holy Scripture are Holy Scripture. Suddenly, Paul's letters talking about God are Paul speaking for God. Suddenly, Paul being a homophobe or a misogynist, both of which are the opposite of Jesus, are just as good as Jesus. Says, look, homophobia, it's in the New Testament, so it's okay right here after Jesus. And that's how it works. To your excellent point about facts, I always say the Bible has a lot of truth, not necessarily a lot of facts. We don't know how much of this is real. We can't prove any of this is real. And so trying to get people to come over to your religion by coercing belief in 2,000-year-old supernatural hearsay, not very solid. But the teachings of Christ are still revolutionary and as threatening to authority now as they were 2,000 years ago. You're right. Jesus spoke in parable and metaphor. He said, I am the bread of life. The dude's a poet. He's not literally made of flour and yeast. And Jesus told his truths in parables, which was actually really smart because he knew he was speaking to all kinds of people, including people who weren't that educated. So by doing storytelling, like comedians do satire, by talking about don't put your light under a bushel, the good shepherd, right? Like by having these kind of characters, the prodigal son, by doing storytelling, he could convey his messages in ways that the crowd would remember. And he would also avoid getting in a lot of trouble with authorities by having things be symbolic and metaphorical. So,
Mm.
if Jesus spoke in parable and metaphor, why is it so hard to view the Bible as parable and metaphor? We got people out there who think that a talking snake is literal fact, but Jesus saying, love your enemies was just him being all metaphorical and shit. I mean, we can't prove the miracles. We can't prove the divine stuff. We can't prove a talking snake. And why would you fight to do that? We do have the teachings of Jesus. And you don't need to believe in the miracles or divinity or talking snakes to follow these ethics.
Yeah, what's interesting is, when we talked about this before the show, I grew up in a family where my mother was a raised Catholic in Western Pennsylvania, and basically
Amazing.
completely fled, moved to California, was against religion. My dad was a Iranian Muslim, born in Iran, and
Yeah. No
I
temper issues in your house. None.
zero, zero. No, it was like as peaceful as the Middle East. And so yeah, no, I grew up in an environment where like we fled. I was in Tehran in November of 1979 as a 1.5-year-old, and
Unreal.
my mom and
Unreal.
dad, yeah, the movie Argo, I was there when that happened, and my family fled because of what happened in that country, which is essentially it got taken over by the Islamic fundamentalists. And so
Right.
my parents were
The extreme religious conservatives took over, and the religious kooks, what do? They oppress women. They oppress gay people. This is all religions. Fundamentalism. Jewish. I mean, look at the Middle East right now. It's not the liberal and moderate Christians, Jews, and Muslims causing these problems, is it? It's the fundamentalists of all the religions. Think about it. The more to the right you are in your faith, the more the same things are true. Fundamentalist Muslims have more in common with fundamentalist Christians than either of them do with liberal Muslims and Christians. Fundamentalists, women are always second class citizens. Pick the religion. The
mm,
more to the right you are, the more God made women 51% of the population, and they're just a little inferior. It's how a male God wants it. That's every religion. Number two, the sex hangups. The more conservative your religion is, women or gay people enjoying sex, that's not part of God's plan. Number three, violence is okay if our side does it, because I'm on the side of the one true God. So if you're opposing me, you're supporting Satan. I'm not going to negotiate with Satan. I'm allowed to hurt you. Number four, the fundamentalists of all the religions, it's always a focus on punishment over healing. And number five, persecution narrative, victimhood. We've been treated so
mm,
badly, which means we're allowed to treat you badly, as I mentioned before. It doesn't matter the religion. Hindus, the more to the right you are, you have those five things in common. The overwhelming majority of moderate and liberal Christians, Muslims, and Jews are getting along just fine all around the world
mm.
right now. And that's boring. And that's why the violent lunatics and bigots get all the airtime from all three religions. Nice people of faith getting along. Nobody wants to watch that. I want to see zealots hurting people. And that's how the media fuels all of this. The media amplifies the lunatics and makes all religion of all faiths look like lunatics.
What do you think that, like, speaking of media, do you think that given I mean, I don't know how to solve the problem because I think that we have incentivized. I made I posted something on Facebook yesterday where I'm like, what is up with this? Like, it's like the National Enquirer is my feed now,
Yeah.
right? It's all this
Yeah.
fake shit,
Yeah.
and it's stuff that it's trying to essentially assess my interests. I'm a confusion to the algorithm, by the way, because
Mhm.
of I'm a moderate, and so it'll show me super left wing stuff and super right wing stuff, and I'm like, why is it showing me any of this stuff? I just want to see what's up with my buddy from college, you know. And so, what responsibility do you think that the media now plays in propping up these different narratives? Because you have it on both sides of the aisle, but I mean, this one we're talking about here in particular, the media's all over it because, to your point, it's inflammatory. It's probably entertaining for some people.
Propping up what
Yeah,
narrative? I'm sorry, Darius. Propping up what narrative?
just propping up the narrative of right wing nationalism or the
Oh,
opposing
completely.
side of it,
Completely.
right?
Because the media will
Yeah.
never ask a question about it. The media will never ask a homophobic politician, where in your holy book, sir, does Jesus drive the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? The media is terrified of asking tough questions like that because they're terrified of not getting a return booking. We all know they trade information for access all the time. So, when I grew up, it was Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson on TV all the time, and the media told me these men are Christian leaders. And they talked about zero of the stuff Christ talked about. They weren't talking about poverty. They weren't talking about helping the less fortunate. They were talking about welfare queens and abortion and feminists and homosexuals and like it's nothing Jesus talked about. Not nothing. But they were great villains. Pat Robertson was a great villain. 9/11 was caused by lesbians. I mean, that was fantastic. And that's why the media put them on because it was hate watching. Liberals watched that shit too because it was hate watching. Journalists have a responsibility to tell the truth. The media has a responsibility to get ratings and eyeballs and clicks. So you cannot trust the media because its only job is to get clicks and eyeballs. That's it. Uh, so we're just going through this generation's version of the same media static that we had with TV and radio and all different kinds of bullshit. It's just now we're playing God with AI and trying to recreate the world in our own image.
but when you so like that being the case, and this is where I'm starting to get kind of hung up, where I'm like, okay, we have there's a Warren Buffett's business partner passed away, Charlie Munger. I love Charlie
Yeah.
Munger. He says, "You show me someone's incentives, I'll show you their behavior." Right. And so we have this world where there's an incentive for attention, and we have algorithms that we have the smartest minds in the world that used to be in Bell Labs solving these amazing problems are now getting hired by these Apples and Facebooks to basically grab our attention, hijack our attention. And they're doing it in a way that is creating divisiveness. They're incentivized to show me shit in my feed that I don't want to see. That
Yeah.
I'm smart enough to know that they're trying to manipulate me or get my attention to sell me something,
Yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, like we the people, like I'm like, look, these people work for us. That's the way I look at it. I'm
Yes.
like, the politicians work for us, the media works for us. If we don't give them our attention or our money, they go out of business. And so, like, what's good for the 85% that are not on the outside parts of the bell curve, both left and right, is not what's happening right now. We are the people that what do you know? Are you follow James Tallarico at all?
Of course, he's awesome.
I love him. He's
Yeah.
like that guy is the man. And he said, and he's a Texas. I'm in Austin, Texas, by the way. And
Right
so
on.
I'm a huge fan of his. I'm like, that guy, for those of you that are listening that don't know James Tallarico, check him out. I think this guy could be
He's
the next
great.
president of the United States.
Yeah.
And so Tallarico's like, look, this is not a war between left and right. This is a war between bottom and the top, right?
Yes. Always
And,
has
and
been. They
right,
they they tell us it's between conservative and liberal. It's always in this country been between aristocracy and democracy.
right. And so if we're using the teachings of Jesus, he's all about the bottom, right? This guy's all about supporting people that are needy, that are homeless, that don't have enough to eat. Like,
Yep.
you look at the teachings of Jesus and you're like, this guy's supporting the little guy,
Yeah.
right? So this is about the top keeping control, managing the systems that do that. And we have an incentive system around it, but we all have to do our own part. And I think the thing I loved about your book is that it gives you some ammunition so that we can have real conversations with people, to your point, that are part of that third, that are probably apathetic, right?
Yeah.
um so if I'm interacting with those folks and I start talking and I want to have a real conversation about the teachings of Jesus, and a lot of them, what I've found, maybe if whether they're on the right or they're apathetic, is that their position is, well, yeah, but the Bible says this too. So how do you educate them to say, well, no, that's actually
Yeah.
the teachings of
Well,
Paul
here's how I say
versus
it. The
Jesus?
Christians aren't supposed to follow the Bible. Christians are supposed to follow Christ.
Correct.
The Bible tells you that you can rape a woman and then pay her dad some money and then marry her, so it's okay. The Bible tells you how to trade your 10-year-old child for a goat. The Bible tells you who to murder and why to murder them. The Bible tells you to murder people for collecting sticks on a Saturday. Christians are not supposed to follow the Bible. Christians are supposed to follow Christ. And that's where it gets dodgy because you've got the anything but Jesus Christians. And if I could, um, they always say like the top growing religious group in this country are Mormons. I hear a lot,
Mormons, yeah.
or some say Islam is the fastest growing religion. A lot of folks will point out that no, on surveys, none of the aboves is the largest growing religion.
Mm,
I
yeah.
think, to your point before, Darius, the largest growing religious group in America are, and this is beyond trying to reach the apathetic. Who I'm trying to reach with this book are people, of course, beyond the people who feel crazy because they know Jesus isn't a dick like their uncle. But I think the largest growing group is people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual because they're so
Yeah.
turned off to all the hypocrisy and cruelty out there. And the good news of the Bible is that Jesus is not a dick and doesn't allow you to be a dick. And we got to find names for these people who use Jesus as a prop. You know, some call them fake Christians. Some call them Christians in name only. For the Trumpers, I call them grab 'em by the pussy evangelicals. You know what? And maybe they are the real Christians, and we need to call other people the Christ followers. But the
Mm,
fact is, it looks like there are really more and more two separate groups, and there always have been. The Christians who are part of a club that has to be on top. And then there's the Christ followers who recognize we're here for service, not power, to help others, not to lord over them. That real manhood is not measured in who you dominate, but who you uplift.
yeah. I love that, man. what you just said a moment ago. I've been observing. I don't know how much time you've spent in Austin, Texas, but there's a lot of people
I
moving
love
here from
Austin, Texas.
LA and New
Yeah.
York. I moved here from San Francisco. I grew up in LA. Um, and it's a lot of the what you're talking about, like raised one way, but are very spiritual, like
Yeah.
connecting with source, with God, whatever you want to call it. What I've also found is a lot of them, and you'll appreciate this. I don't know if you're seeing this in New York. A lot of them are saying, I'm like follower of Jesus. They'll say follower of Jesus, but they're not saying that they're Christian.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I've noticed that this is a thing I just started noticing within the last
Yeah. That's happening.
year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Christians become a dirty word for a lot of people. And it's not because of Jesus. Young people aren't leaving the church because of God or because of Jesus or Noah's Ark or Santa Claus. They're leaving because of Christian leaders who don't follow Jesus's teachings about how we're supposed to treat each other. And you don't need to believe in talking snakes to recognize that Jesus is very specific about how we're supposed to treat each other. And the media is never going to do it. The media is never going to call out these frauds. The Democratic Party is always going to be too cowardly. The Democratic Party is never going to call out frauds and hypocrites. It's going to be up to the rest of us to convince these right wingers that hate is not a Christian value.
yeah, it seems like so obvious, right? But I again, I think this goes back to what we were talking about before, where I think that the algorithm is weaponizing people's voices right now in a
I think
way
you're right.
that's that's more devastating than probably it could have been, like the media could have in the past, and we're feeling the side effects of that. But I think everyone's looking for a better truth, right? That's like, look, love always wins. Like in the long run, in the short run, it might get its ass kicked by bullshit,
I agree.
but but at the end the truth always comes out, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, you kind of brought up the point around like the MD thing with Bush Cheney, and at the end of the day that
Yeah.
truth came out, and then people turn their back on it.
And
And
what are they doing now? Now they're trying to get us to go to war for oil in Venezuela. Instead of saying it's about WMDs, they're saying it's about fentanyl. And no fentanyl comes from Venezuela. But guys who like bombing brown people to steal resources don't really need much of a reason.
yeah, I mean, we're in it right now. It's really, I think, a tumultuous time. I mean, I'm 47 years old, so I've been an adult now for, I don't know, 6 7 years. And I've never felt this uncomfortable about where we're at in the world.
Oh, it's
How
been bad before. It's been bad before. It's bad now, and this could be the end of the American experiment. I mean, this is all the guardrails seem to be collapsing just in time for our 250th birthday. But I'd remind you that 20 years ago, everyone hated each other over Iraq, and we had body bags coming home every day, and a global
sure.
recession and a housing market crash. I mean, Bush was people were living in their cars. World War II was a terrible time to be alive. The Civil War, 600,000 people dying over whether we're going to keep people as property or not. This is just a bit worse than mediocre fascists being dicks on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes,
Fair
times are
enough.
hard, but when times are hard, when times are awful and scary, that's when our love is needed more than ever. That's when it's more important than ever for us to be kind and strong and not filled with hate, because hate makes you stupid, but let the outrage guide you. And if you feel too weak to handle reality, my advice is find someone who's more freaked out than you and be strong for them, because we're going to need each other to get through this. And love is the only thing that's going to save America. Love for America and love from America.
I love it, John, man. What a pleasure having you on the show. For anyone that wants to like get the book, learn more about your work, would love for you to point them in the right direction. We'll make sure we put that in the
You're
show
so
notes,
kind.
and then would love to do the greatness question with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So my book is called Separation of Church and Hate, and this is a book that I first pitched. I did my first ever book proposal of it in 2010 when my dad was in hospice, and I wrote it. And for 13 years I couldn't sell it. I was told, "Well, it's a book for atheists and believers about how to argue with right wing. No one's going to read this." I had publishers tell me, "Oh, my life's not affected by these Christian fundamentalists." And 13 years I had agents and publishers telling me no, and to finally have the book come out and be on the New York Times bestseller list for 7 weeks. It's been very moving for me. So the book is called Separation of Church and Hate. You can buy it at your local independent bookstore or the evil website of your choice. I host the primetime programming on SiriusXM's Progress Channel 127. And so every night you can hear me and my guests. We have celebrities and politicians and comedians and journalists, and of course, callers. If you don't have SiriusXM, we have a podcast called the John Fugelsang Podcast. That's the highlights of last night's show. And I have a Substack, and I'm on all the socials. And such a pleasure to be with you, Darius. Thank
Yeah,
you so much
John.
for having me.
Oh, thank you. I was going to ask you one question I forgot about during the show. Like, how does, having grown up in a family, like, how's the family reacting to the book?
Well, my parents are no longer with us. And my wife is very pleased that I actually did it. My child is completely bored by the entire experience and totally alienated. But when I was writing it, I would read to my wife and say, "Hey, is this okay?" And she would be like, I'd be reading. My wife would just be like, "I'm not laughing. I'm bored. It's not funny. It's not funny." And she's like, "You're trying to write like one of these academics or clergy that come on your show or historians. You're a comedian. Stop trying to write like a smart person." And that was what finally convinced me to, oh, it's got to be a lot more conversational. I can't try to be
Yeah.
smarter than I really am. So I hope my mom and dad would be pleased by this book. It's a lot of stuff that I learned from them, and having so many people who knew my mom and dad and people who knew them as clergy too, and that's been really really gratifying. I have very large conservative families in the South and in New York, and they love me and I love them, and we don't talk about politics too deeply. And I think a lot of families are like that, and you wouldn't know it from watching TV. But I wrote this book for everyone who wants to try to solve our problems nonviolently. And look, if they're going to hide behind religion, if they're going to hide behind the Bible and say that the Bible authorizes their policies, you're allowed to quote the Bible and see if they really mean it.
Love that, man. Such an amazing book. And
Thank
it
you.
is very entertaining, and I've learned a lot from it. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to do the greatness question. We'll make it quick and I'll get you out of here. I know we're at time. So
Okay.
you ready? You ready
Yeah.
when I'm ready? All right, let's
Okay.
do it. All right. So, John, what is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, in a big picture, I'd say lack of intentionality. But not believing in yourself and procrastinating. Show me a procrastinator and I'll show you a critical parent or a critical peer group when they were a child. Um, and it's awful. But if you keep waiting to believe in yourself, you're never going to start. If you keep waiting for everything to be perfect, Ivan Turgenev said this in Russia over 100 years ago. If we keep waiting for the moment when everything is perfect, we shall never begin.
Mm,
So go forward, be imperfect. When you're creating work, do what Anne Lamott calls shitty first drafts. Don't worry. Don't hold off being who you're supposed to be because you don't think you're there yet. You're, it's half of it's about fooling people. So just your comfort zone will kill you. And depression and negativity can be incredible comfort zones if you're afraid of trying. I had 13 years of being told no on this project, and it didn't matter. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew there was an audience for it, and I was willing to wait. I was willing to face the rejection because I believed in the idea, and I believed in it for me. And at the end of the day, I didn't think I could write a book. But when I finally did and had to rewrite it 100 times for a year, I came to love it. And I came to be actually really, really proud of it. So proud of it to the point that, like, and I can say this as someone who's very self critical, I was raised mega Catholic. And, you know, the more I'm hard on myself, the more God will like me. That's how I was raised, right? You got to beat yourself up all the time and just don't bullshit yourself. God knows you're a piece of shit. I exaggerate for comedic effect, but it's easy to get locked in that mindset, and that's keeping your light under a bushel. So just get out there and do the work. Don't wait to be great. Just keep at it. And honestly, this is a good allow. This is a very disorganized monologue, but
no, it's great.
I didn't care at the end of the fact that the book was a hit was wonderful, but the more wonderful part, and I swear to God this is true, was that I liked the book. I didn't
Yeah.
care if it didn't sell because I knew I had done what I set out to do. Like that kind of satisfaction that you don't always get. And I had it in my bones that, like, if this never sells, it's okay. I spent 15 years, 13 years trying to do it. Didn't think I could. Finally did it. And I like the work. honestly, that was more gratifying and shocking than any of the commercial success. So,
Wow.
you know, stay at it, stay in the game. You can win it in the late innings.
Love it, man. Love all the work you're doing. This has been so fun. I'm
You're
really
so
grateful to
kind.
have you come
Thanks.
on the show, my friend. And guys, go out there, check it out. I know we have a pretty wide spectrum of listeners.
Yeah, thanks for
It's
that, by the way. Thank you for having on somebody whose content might piss off a good chunk of your listeners. I respect that. Thank you.
yeah. And listen, if you, my belief is if you're not getting pissed off, you're not looking inward enough. So I'm okay with that. And if you guys got pissed off, hey, don't then turn it off and go listen to another one of our shows.
Right on.
That said, John, thank you so much, man. So much gratitude from here at the Greatness Machine. Appreciate you coming on here. And until next time, everybody, peace out. We love you. She's my lover. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one. She's my lover.